Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's What's on Kickstarter. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the great, good, and not so good campaigns. But before we jump into it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
And you know what to do with the bell.
So Steve, I gotta say man, there's been a pretty good amount of new campaigns that came out this week. Some really banger decks in there. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what's out there and how they did.
And everyone out there, you'll have to make sure to let us know down below what decks really caught your eye this week. And make sure to stick around to the end to find out Steve and Mai's fun picks this week. Let's take a quick word from our sponsor here, and then we'll jump into the decks.
Join us as we celebrate the marvelous and fascinating things that surround us, all in the palm of your hands. You will be mesmerized. Follow us on Instagram at Marvelous Decks and at marvelousdecks.com.
And this week's first great deck is the In Sessions Playing Cards Sophomore Year by Carey.
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, this campaign really does a great job bringing the deck together here. You can see right in the top subsection there, you have printed by USPCC, fulfilled by Carey. So we know from the jump he's doing self-fulfillment. Awesome. Printing 3 decks, I think, here, right, with this campaign?
Well, through stretch goals.
So
yeah. Initially, it's one deck.
All right,
yeah.
one deck, 11,000 gold. All things self-fulfillment. That's a reasonable price point on it.
Yeah.
Jump into the campaign here itself, and I gotta say, I love the fun styling of the whole thing. Obviously, this is a nostalgia-based deck. It's really trying to bring you back to the 90s, those kids who grew up in the 90s. It's very much a Saved by the Bell inspired deck, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
You can really see this is very reminiscent of the logo from like a lot of the aspects of the show. And you can even see a lot of his tiers are actually named after episodes, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very colorful, very vibrant, very much like that late 80s, early 90s vibe there. Gets right into the features, awesomely done. Cards printed by USPCC, print run of 1,000. I really am excited about this custom tuck box because I think it's very ingenious. Touches on it a little bit here.
It's really cool. I saw it in person. I was, I had the chance to look at it, and it's really cool.
It's fun. So the idea behind this custom tuck here is that it's going to be pretty much a replica of the old school Trapper Keepers, like one of the first variations of the Trapper Keepers that came out that you would throw all of your folders and notebooks and everything into in high school, elementary school, whatever it was back in the day when you were in school in the 90s. And it's interesting because I remember when I got my first Trapper Keeper, it wasn't like plain color one. It was actually a very like stylized one. I actually think I still have it in the basement, which is crazy. But
Of course you do.
I do, because it holds like all 10 of my comic books.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
all 10 of them. These are also, I gotta add, these are great shots by Ryan. He did an awesome job.
yeah, the photographs look
bringing out
awesome.
that feel. Yeah.
I love tying in the highlighters, not only for the thematic aspect of it, but for the colors there. It looks so good. The one thing, and I will say, the one thing that stood out to me about this deck, and it was an interesting thing that I brought up with Danny, it was the colors he chose for the faces of the cards. I thought it was an interesting choice to go with a red for a replacement of a black. Obviously it's more of a magenta than a red, but a reddish tone for a black, and then the blue for the red was interesting. And I think some people they take that as a breaking point for it, kind of a deal breaker there. But I think ultimately the colors chosen for this deck just really pop with that 80s 90s vibe.
Yeah, I would have just reversed those color schemes.
Yeah, and I love the fun little like additions to the courts, which always remind me of OPC, but I love the way they did that there.
Yep.
I have a fun half brick box here, which looks kind of like a pencil case, which I think is really cool. Which is on the add-ons. This does a really good job discussing the add-ons themselves, a lot of visuals with it, nice descriptions of it. Then you get into the stretch goals, which I think are perfectly set up here. So what do we take a look here at what we're looking at price point wise? One deck, $20 shipped. I think that's spot on, man.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it could be a little less than that. I think that Trapper Keeper tuck box was a little more expensive than we're used to seeing with even Close Street. It was definitely more expensive. You know, so ultimately it would be good to have this around an $18 ship deck, but I think that tuck box kind of made it a little more difficult to do that.
Throw a little innovation in the mix, and it can definitely bump up the cost there. So it gets to be tough, but...
Oh, dang, there's my name. Thanks, buddy. It might not even be me, but it's my name. Thank you.
And honestly, I love the fact that Danny really put a lot of the thought into the risks and challenges as well, because I think that's a big part of any campaign, is making sure you address those risks and challenges. So, well done, Danny. Good luck, man.
Yeah, great job. That purple one's dope.
Dude, all these decks are really fun.
The night edition. Almost there.
I'm going slowly because I don't want to miss it. Oh yeah, that is
there.
That is sick. I do like it.
Yep.
So very
Night
nice.
School of Deals. Gilded purple.
And
Yummy.
for this week's first good deck, we have the Bloom playing cards. So I have to say, this is actually a really cool deck. I love the look of that tuck there. And the campaign itself really is on the cusp of being great. There were a few things that stood out to us that just needed a little bit of a tweak to really get it to that next level, to make it a great campaign. You can already see 5 days in, it's a little bit over halfway, so it's trending well. I actually like the fact too, and you can see it's included here. They actually used the budget function for Kickstarter, which is something that I really would love to see all creators use, because I think it helps a lot in building out the expectations of where funding is going. You know, this is something we've discussed a lot in the past, where people see $100,000 campaign and they're like, oh man, I'm gonna go get rich making cards on Kickstarter. Most creators from Kickstarter can tell you you're not getting rich off of it. So
that's for damn sure.
So with that in mind, you know, I think it's really good to show the budget and where a lot of this cost goes. So let's dive into this campaign here.
Yeah.
Gives a great,
definitely fun artwork.
You know, good artwork. It gives a fun little about me section immediately at the top. The one thing that stands out as something we've discussed in the past as well is the fact that this is a multilingual campaign, and while I think that's exciting, I always think that it creates a flow issue when, for the multilingual portion of it, you alternate back and forth between whatever your primary language is and the secondary language. In this case, it happens to be English, it looks like, is the primary, and French as the secondary. Well, I think that's great. I think it makes a lot more sense in this case to actually run duplicate versions of the campaign. So run the whole campaign as an English one, and then immediately below it, do the entire campaign in French. That way you create that consistent flow that the story and the sales pitch needs in order to really draw someone in, because this is actually a really artistic and dope looking deck. It's a collector's deck, obviously, but I think from that point of view, you want the story to come through as cohesively as possible. We have a little features section here. We have printed by Cardamundi, True Linen B9 finish. So we know the stock off the gate and the printer. Awesome. Really good job on the story. Again, I think really the one thing with the story and just flow in general is making sure to do a single language followed by a single language, not the alternating back and forth. And then here, to me,
well, definitely like bring these images a little bigger. You know, even if you don't even have to put them all there. I mean, I think it's cool, obviously, because it is such a heavy art deck. If you want to show all those cards, which is, you know, totally suggested, bring them a little bit more, kind of like the aces there, even larger and in rows of fours. I think it will be a lot easier to see, and then just throw a little bit of text in between them.
I think there's so much detail in these cards, and being a collector's set, being able to see that artwork will really help sell it. I absolutely love the aces, and especially at Ace of Spades. So
that's
cool.
Dope.
Really well done.
Like, that's, I mean, look at that. Look at that artwork. It's beautiful.
The artwork is awesome. Very reminiscent to me of like tattoo styling, which I really like.
Yeah,
and then that back design is just fire. And I like the kind of implied border around it, where there isn't actually a hard border, but you visualize it because of the white space and the sharp edges of it.
Yeah, that's good.
Gets into the stretch goals here. If we achieve the basic goals, new surprises will be added. So the one thing I will say too with stretch goals is that I think it's very important to at least have 1 or 2 in the beginning if you're going to plan on including stretch goals. The reason being, stretch goals are really a way to drive momentum. Once you hit the goal, things can very easily plateau. People see, okay, it's already hit the goal. What's the motivation for me to back it now? I'm going to wait to the end and see how it goes and just back then. And obviously you want a continuous flow of new backers. one of the great ways to do that is stretch goals. And so, I'm a firm believer that having at least a stretch goal or two is crucial. And especially if you're going to tease the idea of stretch goals in the future, you want to have something so it's like, hey, we've thought this out. Here's the stretch goal to whet your appetite, and the rest of them will be decided later or unlocked later. And you can almost make the stretch goals themselves kind of a tease where you say, like, unlocked at this, and you can use a stretch goal to unlock a stretch goal if you really want to get, like, mysterious about it.
I mean, I think they have that down here.
Oh.
Like unlocking of the stretch goals.
There we go.
Yeah.
And this is so perfect point here. The flow, the breaking it up into the English and then the French threw me off for sure. So
yeah.
Sticker.
So they have exactly that, and basically once they hit that stretch goal, that's added automatically, other than the tote bag.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very nicely done. Nice add-on section as well. I really think, they did a really good job putting this together. I like the fact, too, that the colors of the campaign tie in really nicely with the simple red, black, and white of the deck itself. And then we get into the cost and deadlines, which I think is something we don't always see. Like I said, I'm a firm believer that project budgets and timelines are always awesome to share because it allows a lot more transparency. Having that information there gives everyone an idea of when you plan on having this delivered. We always see something along the lines, and it's always included in the pledge tiers themselves, that estimated delivery date, September 2021. But being able to actually see all of that information broken out at stages allows you to also be much more transparent when things maybe miss a deadline.
Yeah.
Here's this cool project budget aspect. And then getting into the risks and challenges, nicely done with it. Again, I think the two big things that stood out to us on this one that would take it from a very good campaign to a great campaign were just breaking up the language section into one primary language section, one secondary language section, so that there's a better flow throughout the entire story, and then doing a little bit of a rework on the images of the cards to really make them a little more visible, so that throughout the campaign you actually get a good feel for the artwork and the detail and the beauty of it itself.
How much did these go for?
And that price point.
That's expensive.
Yeah, $25 shipped. And honestly, the deck itself is $19. I get it. There's a lot of design work going into designing 56 custom cards. At the end of the day, though, design work very frequently gets eaten to some extent in a campaign. You're looking to make your money on the back end selling the decks, not reimburse yourself for your own time into it. $19 is a high price point for this, when the really only additional aspect to it is it looks like foil on the tuck there.
Yeah, I don't know if even that's, I don't know. I mean, it looks it. But...
It does look it, and see if we can find something on the tuck here that discusses.
It says it.
Black tuck box with red foil ink.
Yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, there is a little bit of an added cost for that, but ultimately still $19. This could be a $15, $16 deck coming in at a $20, $21 price point and be absolutely reasonable. But that $25 price point is a little bit high for what this is.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck, Laura. And for this week's Needs Help campaign, we have the Illusion of Deception game cards by Marvel Adoms. Marked illusion playing cards. Interesting. They've got two videos real close. I would say, too, off the bat, there's a lot of scrolling just to get to information. There isn't even really a story established yet. I would say that one of the big things that stands out to us here is reorganizing this in order to make it flow better would be really helpful. The other interesting thing about this, printed by Swiss Marvel Adoms, it sounds from that like you're printing the cards yourselves instead of producing the cards with another printer. So that opens a very big question of who in fact is printing these cards. Then on top of that, who's going to be fulfilling them? Magicians can be picky about their stock and how it fans and spreads and all of these things that unknown stock can kind of be difficult to get on board with. I think that...
What's the goal here?
$6,128.
He's printing 2,500 decks.
So that's a super low goal considering the deck run and shipping there. So you bring that goal into it, you're going to end up either eating a lot on the shipping side of it, yeah, that's a tough one there. I actually really like the back design, I'll be honest. It's very very intricate. I like the lotus. Looks cool.
Looks like a bridge card.
It does look like a bridge size card.
That's just a render, probably.
Yeah, hopefully, yes. So yeah, I mean, here we go. So went with simple deck, one of the world's foremost experts on mark cards, but we didn't explain the system. All right, so obviously they're really selling this hard as a mark deck, and that's cool. The one thing I would say though, like, if this is the world's foremost expert on the mark cards, name recognition doesn't hurt. Who's the foremost expert? Printed in the Swiss.
I want to know who that expert is.
Printed.
Because the fact that they couldn't see it during a rival test.
Yeah. Printed in the Swiss on traditionally cut classic stock with embossed magic finish by the Marvel Adoms company. So
Printing it themselves, I guess?
maybe, but then that raises a question to me of what are your credentials to be a printer here? It sounds like you're magicians who have designed a deck. Have you printed decks in the past? From what I can see, this is your first created campaign, 0 backed. I'm now very leery that this potentially is a printer paper deck of cards. I don't know.
Yep.
And again, I'm hoping that it's not. I highly doubt it is. But also, Illusion of Deception playing cards are printed using vegetable-based inks and starch-based laminates on FC-certified paper sourced from sustainable forest. That is 100% copy from USPCC. And if that's the case and USPCC is printing your deck, just say it. Like, or...
Yeah, I mean, that has a lot more legs than Marvel Adoms.
Yeah, like, I don't know who Marvel Adoms company is. Like, you're not printing the deck, you're producing the deck, you created the deck. There's a lot of distinction to be made there. But ultimately, like, if USPCC is printing your deck, you're losing credibility by not saying that because USPCC carries more weight than Marvel Adoms any given day of the week when you're trying to sell this to someone other than yourselves. So definitely consider who's actually printing this deck and getting it out there.
That's so small.
Yeah, like, I like the idea that I'm not exactly sure what this actually is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know what that is, so obviously that's unknown. What else? We'll pay $1,000 to the one who could beat us with our cards. I don't know. It says Marvel Adoms in a lot of places.
It really does, and I'll be honest, like, if this is the tuck, that's gonna be a hard sell. Like, if you want to go print decks for yourselves, that's perfectly fine, but if you also want to sell them to the masses, like, people want to feel a connection with the deck, and ultimately, like, I've gone through this and I'm not exactly sure who Marvel and Adoms are. I haven't really built much of a story out because of this. I mean, look at, okay, here we go. The first definition of street magic. We're finally getting into a little bit of a story here, but again, we're 2/3 of the way through the campaign. Like, going back to that whole idea of reordering what's actually here to make these worthwhile.
Yeah, and, you know,
He's first creator.
the risk and
Yeah, risks and challenges. Like, first creator, you need major risks and challenges included in here because to me, this just shows that you haven't fully thought through the process.
How much does that go for?
Let's go check it out. It's $30 just for the Joker card, so I'm very nervous here.
Oh, good.
Marked Illusion playing cards.
Oh, $40.
$40, yeah. Yeah, and here's the thing too, Magic Finish is also something that's USPCC. So to me, this sounds like it's going to be a USPCC printed deck, but it doesn't say that anywhere.
Right.
Because, like, here's the thing too, printed in the Swiss. If you're saying this is printed in Switzerland, but it's actually printed in the US by USPCC, that's false advertising. Like, you need to be clear with this information. Ultimately, and if that is not the case, and you are in fact printing this yourself in Switzerland, you probably shouldn't word for word take copy from other companies that people are aware of.
That isn't true. That's not true. Like, where are you getting this paper?
Yeah.
Where, like, there's something definitely missing.
Yeah.
From this campaign.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think
we created it with a note. I love the plan. So they created it. Yeah, I don't know, man. Something seems a little off. Embossed magic finish by the Marvel Adoms company.
This is the one thing I will say too, is if English is not your first language and it is your target market, making sure to reach out to someone who can help with things like made from decay products, which is definitely meant to be recycled products, but using a simple translation may not come through there. You always want someone to really check your campaign start to finish. There's a good length to this campaign that we usually don't see in our need help campaigns, and I think there's a lot of potential with this deck, but there are major missing parts. Who's actually printing this? Who's fulfilling it? Price point is more than double what it actually should be for what you're getting. The way the campaign's built out, there's no reason to have a limit of 2,500 on this at the end of the day. You could have made this a buy as many as you can and print as many as you can situation. The other thing I will say is if your ultimate goal is to sell a deck of cards, things like these jokers and the magic book and all of that should have been add-ons. The other thing too is if you are going to use limits of 2,500, you actually have enough here for 5,000, 7,500. Yeah, I mean, you have enough here for like 15,000 decks because you limited all of them to 2,500, but 4 times 2,500 is 10,000 decks. So things like that are things you have to consider when doing this, because if you were actually intending to limit this to only hit 2,500 decks, then you actually can oversell significantly as this is set up right now.
So, dude, Marvel Adoms is a PR company. Kind of like Jalop.
Interesting.
And if you go to their website, they show other campaigns that they're involved with. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this whole campaign right here is trying to deceive me.
Yeah, I would definitely throw
something's weird.
I would definitely throw a beware on this just because it seems off.
Yeah, something's weird about it.
Yeah. So good luck. I like the deck. I think there's a lot of potential in it, but this is just a disaster in the making right now. So if this does not fund, I would definitely say if you're genuinely interested in making this deck happen, revisit it. You know, also if this is being run by a Kickstarter PR company, I would probably avoid using their services. So, best of luck. So Steve, let's see what else we have this week. For another great deck this week, we have Heal the World playing cards by Reflect playing cards. Honestly, really solid campaign. They have some really good price points on this deck. I'm actually excited to see how a lot of this plays out. The one thing that I would say too is if you're going to drop a link in here, you can link them in the campaign. Yeah, make it clickable. You know, it's worth doing that because then it makes it easier, and you can actually make part of the text the link itself so it's a little bit cleaner. Printed by USPCC, filled by gamblers, touches on the facts that it needs to. Relatively standard looking deck, but I do like the recolor of the red quartz into that bright green to give it more of an earthy feel, which is cool.
I'd like the pictures a little closer, you know, just to, you know, make them easily viewable.
Yeah, give you a little bit more of that detail up close. But nicely done with the add-ons there. We're definitely going to be curious to see how you do with the merchandise as well, because I feel like that's always something that's so hit or miss. And then our boy Ito is the designer.
Our boy Ito.
Then Cameron Brown. And honestly, Cameron, the one thing I would say too is I'd almost say introduce yourself a little bit further up just to tie that personal side of the story. And about yourself on the bottom is always great, but bringing in that little bit of a, hey, I am Cameron Brown and this is the story, never hurts, adds that personal touch to it. So, let's see what the goal is real quick. This would actually scroll. There we go. 9,000 for a single deck. Perfectly on. Good luck. Another great deck this week, the graphic cheat sheet to the palettes. Already crushed their goal, 310 backers. For anyone who backed the first one, it's a very interesting deck. The one thing that always stands out to me as ironic about this deck is that the first one was intended to be kind of a color cheat sheet, but ultimately, unless you're using Pantone ink, depending on the paper type, colors are going to vary. And USPCC does have limitations on the amount of Pantone inks they will print on the back of a deck of cards. So ultimately, while very clever, not necessarily useful in practice. But I'm not going to lie, even if, aside from the practicality point of view, I do enjoy the very like square-oriented styling of the deck. Great features right there. Stretch goals I'd almost say moving the stretch goals down a little bit so that you continue the story flow a little bit better makes the most sense. But otherwise, this is a really well put together campaign. Lots of images, lots of text, builds out the story really well. And you're looking at a $19 price point for this, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good luck. Next up, we have for another. The other thing I will say too with this deck is that the goal itself is a little bit low.
Pretty low.
All things considered, with shipping and printing, you're going to be looking at significantly more than $3,400. While that's not a problem, I think it is important to tie into the story that if you're only looking for partial funding because you're willing to self-fund, that explains a little bit more of a lower goal, and that's probably the case here. But being transparent about that never hurts. Oh. And for another great deck this week, let's check out the For Clans playing cards from Doc's Playing Cards. This is a long time awaited deck. Very cool styling to it. Obviously Japanese themed. 135 backers already hit their goal, so congratulations on that. And they take a different approach to a campaign, which we see from time to time, and I think when well executed is awesome. And that's no text, all images for the actual build out. For anyone who's familiar with Kickstarter, the text editor within Kickstarter is problematic to say the least. And so taking this all image approach actually allows you to format and create your campaign visually the way you want it exactly without having to worry about some of the quirks that Kickstarter brings into the mix. So I'm really a big fan of this approach. I don't think everyone could pull this off as well just because it takes a lot of design effort and energy and planning that actually doesn't really necessarily pay out when it comes to the funding of the deck. You know, it makes it much more visually appealing, but unless you're willing to spend time building it out, it can also be very haphazard. So nicely done on this one. I know Brad and Doc put a lot of thought and effort into building this out, so it looks well.
Yeah, I mean, they always do a great campaign, and, you know, Brad is an amazing designer.
Absolutely.
And, no, the only thing I would really like to see is the font a little bigger. It is a little small for my old eyes, but, you know, other than that, obviously they always put together a great campaign and always have great decks.
Yeah. Nicely done, guys. Congrats again on already funding, and can't wait to see where this campaign goes. For another great deck this week, we have the Chris Cards Glowing Playing Cards. I gotta say, these are very, very bright cards. They pop awesomely. Printed by Kingstar. Fulfilled, I'm assuming, by Kingstar as well. I know they do mention it in here, and we'll get into the facts a little bit. The one thing that I would say is in this facts section here, high premium grade linen crushed paper for cardistry magicians and collectors. Mention that Kingstar is printing here. It's mentioned farther down below, but I do think that bringing that into a feature section just reinforces it. To me, like, German cord stock doesn't mean anything necessarily unless I can compare it to other decks I've felt in the past, and even doing that mentally, dropping a name will help me make that connection. You know, if someone says, oh, it's going to be printed on Cardamundi B9 Slimline stock, I know what that feels like without having to have a deck of Slimline in my hand because I've played with it in the past. So that name recognition really is important. But otherwise, I think this is a really well put together campaign. Talks about the...
Unfortunately, at the top, it kind of... There's a lot of text.
Yeah. Before
we jumped into any images, you know, I'd like to see an image above at the top first, you know, kind of introducing us there.
Yeah. And
like right there. This deck actually really looks a lot like the Witches deck from Kingstar.
Yeah, it has a very similar styling to it. I'm also curious too, because I think these may, in fact, they're two different videos, but they're very similar in style. And it almost feels like a static image with a differently designed video may have been more helpful there. But again, still, I think a great campaign. 163 backers.
I would have liked to get rid of that video and throw in a couple images up there. I think two videos like that back to back is kind of useless.
Yeah.
But I like seeing the video up top or the static image up top with the video down below, or, you know, vice versa. But I think having two videos like that is just, I guess, you know, non-conducive.
Well, yeah, and especially if they're redundant. You know, if they're two separate things, it makes a lot of sense. But even though breaking it down a little bit farther would have made more sense either way. So,
well, good luck.
Good luck. And another great campaign this week, we have the Danger decks. One thing that stands out to me on this one is that the goal is a bit low for what it is, but very well put together campaign. Gives all the details you need there, really tells an interesting story, and ties into some of the other merchandise you can pick up with it, like these cardistry packet trainers, which look awesome.
Oh my god, the carpenter makes amazing trainers.
Yeah, no, absolutely spectacular trainers. I'm really excited to see how this deck turns out, because I think there's a lot of potential with it. I would be curious about the goal, and I think the goal is low because it's really, again, more so looking for that extra bit of funding they need to self-fund the majority of it. But being transparent about that is always helpful, because a low goal can be a little unnerving for some people, so you want to make sure that you address those concerns. Yeah, otherwise, excited to see how this deck comes out, and good luck. And for another great deck this week, we have the Damn Fools high-quality deck of playing cards from Moon.
Dude, I think this deck is named after us.
I don't know. I don't consider us fools. I don't. Sure, Steve. We'll go with it. Very interesting style deck. Very much got an old school vibe to it. It kind of reminds me of like those Laurel and Hardy times. I don't know why, but that's the vibe I get from it. Really detail oriented.
Old man.
Oh yeah, I'm such an old man. All that really detail-oriented information here, printed by Legends, fulfilled in the US by Gamblers, and EU by 52 Wonders. All of that's wonderfully presented there. A lot of images. I do wish there was a little bit of text between the images just to break it up and make sure that on mobile you're not quickly scrolling through and missing details. But really nicely done. So good luck. And for another Needs Help deck this week, we have the 14-segment custom playing cards. So I gotta say, very interesting concept with the deck. Kind of reminds me of like a clock where it's unplugged and you just see like the old school LED backboard to it. Not a lot of information on it though. Ultimately, has some of the specs there, printed by MPC. Not sure who the fulfillment is, though that very well could be handled by MPC as well. But there just isn't a ton of information here, and I think that's one of the big things is, if you have a very, very custom deck like this, you want to show as much of the deck as possible. So more images, really build out the story around this, talk about fulfillment, and yeah, build out what's interesting about this.
I think it could be fun.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And also, I think the other thing to consider with this one too is price point spot on for it. So there's a lot of leg room there at $13 for this to be a reasonable deck. If it's something that appeals to someone's, taste, but you got to build out that story. Never forget that this is really a sales pitch, so make sure to sell the deck as best as possible, including yourself, the story, the producer, everything that goes into it. So, good luck. And, what decks are you going to be backing this week, Steve?
I would back the In Sessions by Danny. He's a great dude. I would definitely back the 4 Clans deck. Super cool.
Nice.
Brad does a great job. Trying to think what else is out there.
I like how this has turned into like a memory game for you now. I feel like I'm helping your memory by making you remember all the decks we look at.
I keep forgetting that I have to do this at the end, and I'm just like, you would think I'd remember by now doing 50 of these episodes, but I think yeah, what else? What about you?
I definitely agree on the In Sessions and the 4 Clans as well. Both really stood out to me as well put together, beautifully designed decks. I would back both of those for sure. And then the other one I would back would probably be the I'm blanking on the name of it now. I can't even remember. It's terrible.
The blood, is it the blood one?
Bloom. There you go. Bloom.
That's it, yeah.
Again, both getting old. We need to do more of those memory games. I see ads for like scrolling through Instagram.
Totally.
But yeah, no, I think this week for me, the big ones would definitely be Danny Carey's In Sessions, Doc's playing cards, the 4 Clans, and then Bloom. I think all three of them have great artwork to them, great stories behind them, really exciting decks. So
yeah,
let's take a quick word from our sponsor here, and then we'll check out this week's fun campaign.
Join us as we celebrate the marvelous and fascinating things that surround us, all in the palm of your hands. You will be mesmerized. Follow us on Instagram at Marvelous Decks and at marvelousdecks.com.
All right, Steve. This week, I don't know, man. I feel like switch it up a little bit this week. I feel like I'm kind of in the same vein here a little bit as a couple weeks back, but I've been on a personal kick lately, so this one makes a lot more sense if you're anyone I've been talking to about this topic. But y'all ready, man?
Let's see what you got.
All right. First up for this week's fun campaign for me, I picked the Jadelabo.
Yeah, try that. Jadelabo?
Jadelabo. Jadelabo. Let's go with that. Jadelabo J1, beautiful, powerful, and smart IDEX 3D printer. So I've actually really been trying to dive into the world of 3D printing recently, and I'm in the midst of trying to figure out, you know, filament versus resin printing and all of that fun stuff. And this campaign jumped out to me, and I thought it was a really cool campaign just to see how reasonably priced a lot of these like large scale 3D printers have become over time. I mean, granted, this thing, all things considered, is about
$1,000.
Yeah, no, maybe. What are we looking at shipping wise? With shipping, $868. So it's not cheap, but at the end of the day, this a couple years ago probably would have been $3,000. Like, that gets me super excited to think about like building these parts that you can use for projects. This is something that we see a lot, you know, 3D printing in general is used a lot for magicians and everything. So I really think it's cool to see the progression of 3D printing. Even this one here, talking about multi-material mode, they can actually print with different types of materials in the same session. So you get harder and softer materials, which, dude, that's super innovative to me. Duplication mode.
Dude, how cool is that? You can make a chest, like a chessboard that, oh, it's so...
It really, dude, I am fascinated by 3D printers, and the one thing that's always kind of held me back from getting one has been the price point on a lot of them. So really starting to see a lot of these become more attainable price point wise is exciting. So look at this.
Era mode, so cool.
Dude, and it looks like it prints with a ton of different materials, which is really cool. So I don't know if I'll be back in this thing. I'm still very early in my research into what makes a 3D printer good for the things I'm looking to do with it. But this may have to go on my list on the high end of what I'm looking to spend for a 3D printer, because I think it really is cool preventing oozing.
Nice.
But yeah, dude, for anyone out there who's familiar with 3D printers too, feel free to reach out to me and let me know your thoughts. I'm always curious in learning more about the process and everything that goes into it, and what you may have learned, pluses and minuses with 3D printers, and what you maybe even think about this 3D printer.
Yeah.
Wow. It's just a dope campaign, dude. All things put together here. It looks really clean, really well done. So.
Jadelabo.
Yeah,
Good job.
Jadelabo. That's what I'm going with. I don't know what the name is.
I don't think it's Jadelabo.
No, I think it's like Jadelabo. Jadelabo? Jadelabo?
Jadelabo.
Let's go with it. It sounds good. If anyone knows the correct pronunciation, feel free to drop that in the comments as well. So, Steve,
Let's hit it.
I'm
Let's hit it.
ready for yours.
I wonder if anybody could guess.
I honestly think this is probably the most practical one you've had yet, but also.
Oh, whatever. Practical. What's that mean? You know what?
I'm not. No,
Practical
don't. You're wrong. You're wrong. I'm gonna tell you flat out. You're wrong. You're taking that wrong. You're taking it as me poking fun at you, and I mean that in the sense of I think this is a practical.
A towel's pretty practical.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the towel. That's what. Okay, you're. I'll be the first to admit it. I was wrong. But I think this is just as practical as a towel. Maybe a little less practical than a towel. But this is something that it makes sense. This will also bring you to a number. This will bring you to a total tally of 4 for this category at this point, though.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So, for Steve's fun pick this week, we have the Ion Titanium Pocket Flashlight.
Is this my 4th or 5th light?
I think this is your 4th, because I think last week we had the same thing, and I think that was your 3rd. Yeah, we'll go with 4th for this week, but I think after this week we have a 3-week ban on you picking light-oriented campaigns.
They just need to stop coming out with some cool lights, man.
But I think this is actually really cool. A USB-C chargeable flashlight, man.
Yeah, and it's small.
Yeah.
I hate having bulky flashlights, and it's sleek. I like it. You can, put it in your pocket if you want pocket protected type action. But the only thing I'd like to see is maybe like a keychain, like a nice keychain, or ring that you can put it on your keys. You know, I think that'd be dope.
Magnetic
But it's
top.
magnetic.
And it does have, if you notice too, on the back there, it does have the spot for like the lanyard, so you could throw your own keychain on
Yeah.
if you really wanted to. But
Right.
dude, I also love the fact that I mean, dude, 650
bright.
lumens, that is super bright.
It is bright.
That's
yeah.
almost as bright as like my Surefire flashlight, and those things are like gold standard.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's not that expensive. You know, they have a $39, the black aluminum, and then you can, you know, I think it's $49.
Titanium.
Yeah, for the
That's
titanium.
really not bad at all. I'd be curious to see.
And you know that's super light. The titanium one must be super light.
I'd be curious to see what the battery life on it is, how long it lasts in.
Right there. It says it right there. Go up a little.
Oh, right here. That's the capacity of standard run times. 10 minutes at high, 1.5 hours at medium, 3 hours on low, and that's use time. I'd be curious though too, because batteries discharge slowly over time, even though it's I'm assuming a lithium ion battery, how long that battery lasts. The one thing I always find with things like this that are battery operated, you keep them in your car in case you need them, and then when you need them, the battery's dead. So something to consider there. But dude, yeah, this is cool.
I mean, 10 minutes is like nothing.
Yeah.
You guys gotta up your battery.
Well,
there.
dude,
get your
650
get it
lumens.
together.
650 lumens burns a ton of energy. I mean, even in a battery operated, like an actual replaceable battery, like like I don't want to say a mag light, but something like that. 650, like the highest setting will burn through those, usually even on the high end in 30 minutes because it just uses so much juice. But 3 hours at a low setting isn't bad, and it's waterproof.
Yeah.
This is cool, man. I dig this one.
Look at that. I get the approval.
Yeah. I mean, you are suspended from picking any more lights for the next 2 weeks, but otherwise, I think this is a very cool campaign, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for checking out this week's episode of What's on Kickstarter. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And drop us a comment down below. Let us know which of the 2 fun campaigns you'd want to back this week, or let us know what campaign outside of playing cards this week piqued your curiosity and you're thinking about backing.
Later, y'all.